And hello, Tracy Noriega here, paying it forward to you and giving permission to choose you on this beautiful online virtual retreat. And I have a wonderful, lovely lady full of laughter, Miss Pasha Marlowe. Thank you so much for being here, Pasha.
Thank you, Tracy. It's my pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, I really chose you to come here and be on this retreat for specifically your dedication to pleasure, to laughter, and to finding, just the fun in the, I love the expression you use, and I know you borrowed it from someone, the brutal, occasions that life gives us, meaning, brutal and beautiful. And
Mhm.
I've always looked at life sort of as the divine comedy, so to speak.
Yes, it sure is. And that quote is from Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, Brutiful.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, and you've had such a journey yourself, and I just want to share with these ladies because I think you have so much to offer in way of finding pleasure. And I know a lot of times when people hear the word pleasure, the first thing they do think of is sensual and sexual, which, hey, that is pleasure,
Could be.
self pleasure and pleasure with another. But you've written a book that I love the title. I would love for you to, introduce it and how you would best explain the how and why for such a book.
Sure. Well, the book, My Next Husband Will Be a Lesbian, really started out as a story of my, call it anger, towards men and some infidelities. I'm on my second marriage and I've been burned a few times, and patriarchy and penises in general. And so that was the original intention of the book. And then it really started to evolve. And I realized that what I was holding on to was also a reclamation of my own desire and my sexuality, which now I today in my mood right now identify as bisexual. And I started leading groups of women who are in heteronormative relationships. So they're women married to a man and they're raising babies and they're driving minivans and, they're in the PTA and they're monogamous and they don't want to necessarily leave their marriage, but there's this part of them, this entire part of them that isn't being expressed or explored, that they're hiding and feeling a bit of shame about, or it's just a secret they're holding on to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started leading these groups for these women. And it's a private Facebook group and some coaching groups I lead. And what started coming out was that women were really feeling like they were more expansive than what our social and cultural constructs could hold. And so they wanted to know if they started to express their sexuality, whatever it may be, anywhere from questioning to lesbian to pansexual, it doesn't really matter. Would that make everything else fall apart? And would they still be able to be seen as professional or ethical or a good mommy and all the things? And yes, all to all those things. Yes. And some women did go on to leave their marriages because that was in their best interest. And for a lot of us, like me, I'm remaining in my marriage. And this idea of my next husband will be a lesbian is that I'm open to, if in the future I am no longer married to my husband, and I know that sounds really wishy-washy, but it's just reality. I'm open to falling in love with anybody who I feel, lights me up and makes me feel like I belong in their world and that I enjoy. So it's really a reclamation of desire and pleasure. But all of that, strangely enough, came from a place of grief and loss and fear. Because as you know from following me a bit, is that a couple years ago, my youngest son, I have 3 kids, 2 are adults. My youngest son, who's now 13, 2 years ago, so when he was 11, got very ill. He got very sick. It's Lyme disease. Everybody always asks, they want to know what he has and if their kid can get it. So it's like, I take it off the table. It's a tiny tick the size of a poppy seed that if you get bit and not diagnosed properly, it wreaks havoc on your life, body, mind, everything. So he's still struggling to the point where he's really just not very mobile at all and doesn't go to school, mainly on the couch every day. So that was taking us down a path of a lot of grief and sadness and loss of his physical abilities, mental capacities, some of them ability to go to school. And he was becoming so depressed that he was suicidal. And now this is, again, now maybe a year and a half ago. And then I started thinking about how I would survive that. And I was wondering if I'd even be able to survive his taking his own life. And so these are obviously very heavy issues that led me, interestingly enough, into the field of laughter, because I started to research how people survive horrible traumas and deaths and losses, including the Holocaust, is where my research started. And I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, where there's a whole passage about how the fact that the people who survived the Holocaust were those that found a way to laugh in community. And that really struck me, kind of like at the perfect time when you pick up a book and it's like the perfect passage at the perfect time. And it gave me chills. And I'm like, okay, I haven't tried that. In 49 years, I haven't laughed or had fun or been playful or silly. I've been quite serious. I've been a professional. I went and got my master's degree. I did the things. I was a good girl. I was a good wife, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, but I actually never figured out how to have fun with myself or even with my friends and family. I was in control. Like I was in control all the time.
That's the operative word, right?
Exactly. And I was fine. I was fine, that other operative word, because it looked fine. But really, I felt like there was an entire part of myself that wasn't expressed, from the side that laughed to the side that understood pleasure, that felt like I deserved pleasure and felt worthy of pleasure, to the sexuality aspect. So it broke me open because I had to fall apart, of course, and have a breakdown before the breakthrough, as many of us do. And so in facing my son's death, I found laughter and pleasure. And then I made it my job because I realized it saved my life and his, and continues to be my passion and my purpose since then. Because when I was a marriage and family therapist before, doing traditional therapy, and then when I went on to be a holistic coach and did the yoga and the meditation, the exercise and all the things, drink your celery juice, drink the water, eat the kale, like it wasn't enough to get me through chronic illness, chronic pain, and suicide. That it wasn't going to be enough. So I had to go in the back door for myself. And I realize now with all of my clients now that it's really a wonderful way to survive and thrive through trauma and heartache that we don't often hear about. Like we hear laughter is the best medicine, but we don't actually figure laughter and humor will get us through death, loss, pain, illness, tragedies. And I see it every day now because that's the lens I'm seeing it through.
Well, you're living it every day. And if anything, like I love how you're applying all of these things because you've gone on this journey. And this is, I mean, what you've said is just so eloquent because that's what a lot of women out there, right? I've done this. I've accomplished, I have a practice, or I have a career, I have a job, I have the family, I have all these things. And yet there seems like I'm not really having fun. I'm not really feeling fulfilled. And then there's these other aspects you've touched on that people won't bring up. Hey, guess what? One of those fulfillment areas is sex,
Yeah.
Right. And then people don't talk about whether or not, well, how fulfilling is your relationship that you're in? The questions of having an open relationship. I've been in that position too with, a previous marriage. And it was like, because as you're saying, I knew I was bisexual and he knew that too. And there was, wasn't a lot going on between us. And I kind of like asked for permission. Well, is it cool to go on the other side, play on the other team?
Yeah. Non-monogamous relationships can work very well as long as there's two consenting or more consenting adults.
Right.
But it's not for everybody. It's not always.
And there has to be the communication. That is key. And it is a difficult subject to bring up, because there's so much wrapped around sex, right? Just in and of itself. And then when you're going to ask for something untraditional,
Yep.
Then there's all these other, you don't even realize all the stuff that comes up, even if you're not religious anymore. I'm a recovering Catholic, but you still
Mhm.
have this stuff in the background that's playing out because you're kind of,
Sure.
is this right? Am I going to be damned? I'm seeing her asking my husband, is it cool if I go,
Yeah.
with women, and yet it's like I still do love you and I don't want our relationship to end.
Mhm.
So I love that you bring all these things in the book. Is it just your stories, or there's culmination, is there not, of other people's stories
Yeah,
too?
I brought in 15 other women, all along the LGBTQ spectrum, from, curious to questioning to bisexual to trans women. And they're all tell their coming out story. And for some of them, the book was their coming out story. So it was really brave that they did come out this way. For some of them, they talked to their therapists or their spouses and their families long ago. And there is a lot of like religious trauma and religious pain points in the book as well. But for most people, it was just the sense of holding on to, like, is this okay? Like, am I still, are people, and am I still going to see myself as a good person if these are my thoughts? And I'm trying to reduce the shame about it all, because now that I talk to these women all the time, like, I have a hard time. I'm now surprised if a woman tells me she isn't bisexual. Like, even the women in the PTA or the people I see in the grocery store, they're like, "Did you write that book?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "I've never told anybody this, but I kind of identify with that." I'm like,
Yeah.
I know most people do. So, like, let's release the shame about it. I have no evidence to back up my claims. I've been, faithful to my husbands. I don't have experience with a woman, and that doesn't make me any less
No,
bisexual,
no.
because I don't have to have the experience to have my knowing. And so I think it's okay wherever we land on that. So I did invite 15 other women to join, because there's some women who have had a lot more sex than I have that are writing very fun experiences in this book, and some painful ones.
Yeah.
Um, and ones who have been monogamous and ones who have chose non-monogamy, and women who have decided that they're not going to say anything to anybody for a very long time, because they're waiting for their parents to die or waiting for their children to grow up, or fill in the blank. So I did want it to be a compilation of many different perspectives, because my perspective, even though I do this Let the Pleasure Be the Measure podcast and talk about sex and sexuality a lot, in my own personal life, there's not any partner nor solo sex going on, because I'm parenting a sick kid and working. So I decided I'm just like, my sex is going to be like, I'm having a love affair with myself, and I'm falling in love with myself and all of my aspects. And if that includes solo sex when I have like a rare moment in the bathroom or something by myself, which is very rare, then maybe. But other than that, I'm just like letting that go. I'm saying I can have a life full of pleasure and sensuality by walking outside and wearing colorful clothes and talking to people like you and having conversations that light me up, and fuzzy blankets and coffee and coffee and chocolate and coffee and chocolate and coffee and chocolate. Like, that's very pleasurable to me. So when I define pleasure, it's an umbrella of pleasure that
Yeah.
could look like getting the medicine down my son's throat while playing music. And so it's not through tears, it's through
Yeah.
some laughter and play. Like, that makes a great day in my house. So it's different for everybody. Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. I love that you bring that out, and in those stories too, to see the diversity, right? Because there isn't just one story. I think so many times, people want to put people in a box, and then that even with all of the shows out that show all these alternative lifestyles and stuff, there's still,
Mhm.
such a rigid look at it. We're still so puritanical when it
Yeah.
comes to sex. And
Yes.
I know I had shared with you when we talked previously, when I was doing all this, I was like, oh my God, is there a book on this? And The Ethical Slut was like my go-to handbook to even know, like, how do I navigate this?
I
What?
know women who won't even read that book because it's called Ethical Slut, because they don't want to call themselves a slut, and they don't want the book in their house. So, like, it's so
Yeah,
interesting.
that's a
That
big
is a
hang up.
book that people go to, but it's not an easy book to purchase if you're in a place of shame or very much
Right. But
privacy.
but I see that as your community and your podcast and your book as those ways to, hello people, let's shed that. Let's forget that. It's 2000. Let's take the, little pilgrim hat off, and we
I do
know
like
what
living out on
turns
the
us.
prairie, though.
Yeah, and we know what turns us on, and guess what? Why not be curious about the other things that could potentially turn you on, right? And um, yeah, so I love that, one, you talk about pleasure as this aspect of sensuality and sexuality, and hey, let's push those borders. Let's look beyond. Let's explore. There are things you've been feeling and you've been stuffing down. Well, here are people who are embracing it, talking about it, making it okay and not
Mhm,
shameful, right? But then, as you've shared about, your story with your son and the Lyme disease, which many women out there can relate to, and I
mhm,
too, when you become a caregiver,
mhm,
when you become a caregiver and you're, like, as you were saying, around the clock, right? And whatever that looks like, because that could be, once, for me, it was like once he came home from school, it was like, bam, so I
mhm.
had that time, and I would start to realize I was having an anxiety attack when I'd hear the bus pull up.
Yeah.
And and I'm like, what is this feeling? I would just have this, like,
Yep.
anxiousness, and I didn't know what was walking through the door, you
Yeah.
know,
Yes. Right.
because of
Right.
all the emotional and behavioral stuff, and then not knowing what had happened at school. Sometimes I did because they already called me. Sometimes I saw the emails. It was just like, how's it going to be,
Mhm. Yeah.
until, and then have to deal with homework, and then have to deal with dinner, and get, I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh, can I just give you a pill and you go to sleep, and
Mhm.
we wake up in the morning. But women are dealing with this, whether it's with their kids who are special needs or ill, whether it's,
A parent
a
or raising.
parent. Yes, how many, and right now with COVID, how many people are living with each other
Mhm.
to help out, whether financially, mentally, emotionally, they're having physical things. So when, and all you women out there know that you are just only thinking about them, about the household, about if you still have a job, about just everything else, and you don't make your self-care a priority.
Yeah.
And thinking about pleasure is
Yeah.
just like, what
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah, it feels too leisurely, and I totally get that. And so I always say sneak it in. I'm not talking about bubble baths and candles right now. Like for people who are caregiving kids or homeschooling or have illnesses or or traumas, like that might not be accessible. But while you're making your coffee, can you smell the coffee grounds? While you're walking the dog and picking up the poop, can you also take a breath of fresh air, and notice the trees? Can you, while you're cooking dinner, play music? I mean, seriously, we sneak it in. We get really, really scrappy. Can you take a couple extra minutes in the shower and actually notice that it feels good to be naked in the shower and do as you wish? Like that, you can sneak it in. And
Mhm.
so I don't talk about pleasure practices in terms of, huge efforts at first. It's like tiny habits that we are already doing and how we can sneak it in. And I do the same thing with humor, because I call myself a laughter and pleasure coach. And when, like, to find the funny when life is not funny, like to find the
Yes.
funny when there's nothing funny to be seen, is very healing. So often, like your kid coming off the bus, same thing. When my kid starts hearing, I start hearing him yell from the other room. I'm like, what am I going to walk into? I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in there and try to find the funny in this. And it's not always easy, and it's not always there right away. It sometimes takes time. But if you can see the world through the lens of humor, even COVID, even masks, even the hand washing, even all of it, like, you can start to reframe and ease some of the stress, because I know so many people are holding on to a ton of anxiety and uncertainty right now. And like, when is this going to end, or what is this going to look like for me, or what are the long-term effects? And so can we start to realize that there are, around the edges and the parameters, some humor about this? Like our coat rack now holds masks. Like everybody's rear view mirror has like masks dangling from it. And like that kind of cracks me up when I see it. Because 2 years ago, somebody had told us we'd all have masks hanging from our rear view mirrors. We were laughing. And so, yeah, I just think there is humor in it. And I say healing through humor in a therapeutic comedy sense, because all good comedy comes from a place of darkness.
Tragedy, yeah.
Tragedy and perspective, yeah, and releasing that tension through the comedy. So all of my favorite comedians have been through some serious shit.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, I think that's beautiful too about what you're pointing out, because that's another thing of mindfulness, because I'm really big on that as well, is are those mindful moments, right? So there's that A Course in Miracles, Marianne Williamson. I mean, I had it like posted in like in my car and everything, like with them, was I can choose peace instead
Yep.
of this, right? And
Mhm.
the other one about I'm willing to look at things differently, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Nice. Exactly.
and yeah, and then if you even think of Eckhart Tolle with, it is as it is, just allow it to be as it is, and just being in that present moment. And I would do exactly what you were saying. I have, in fact, over where I wash the dishes, there's a big sign that says breathe. And I'll
Oh,
just be there while I'm washing the dishes,
yeah.
and I'm just breathing. And like you said, feeling the water, looking at the stuff coming off of the dishes, and sometimes it's just got to be, when you are feeling like that, like it just is like, it's not letting up. It's like, I'll go through the house and be thankful for every little thing. Oh, thank you, coffee maker, for making my coffee. Like, thank you, and, it may seem lame, like, but it's so necessary, because it's those little things, like you said, that we take for granted. Even going into the shower, there are places where they don't even have running water, let alone hot water, that you can stand in there. That's a luxury, having a shower.
It is. And I don't want to deny that there's, heavy feelings and emotions out there, and we move through those too. Like we'll honor if there's fear or grief, we cry, we scream. That's why I call my program Roar with Laughter. Like we're not just like ha 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 laughing. We're like roaring with laughter, because we have these long prolonged cries of losing things and people. We have long prolonged cries of fear. And then sometimes the laughter comes from that place. But we honor those emotions and we move through them. And then we find that there's less time between the tragedy and the laughter. And the graduates from my program, they keep writing to me, and it's beautiful. And their stories are too private for me to share in too much detail, but they'll lose people, like children, after the show. And I'll attend their funeral, and they're laughing. They're telling stories from the lens of humor a week later. And and then they're saying like, thank you for teaching me this. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I think they're superheroes and like warriors for even standing up. And yet it helped them survive those losses, and that there's so much beauty, beautiful, beautiful aspects of life, and so much gratitude there. If we continue to become aware of that and continue to see the world through the lens of laughter and gratitude and pleasure, then we're more likely to see it. But like, I have sticky notes all over my house to remind myself of it, even though I do the work, like I forget. So we have to keep practicing it. Just like your sign that says breathe. I have signs around my house that say, don't forget to laugh, and, find the humor. Someday this will be funny. I'm like, oh, right. I teach that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it isn't to discount that you are going through something that's heavy, but it's like, why concentrate on just that? Like there is that, as you say, there's those things we can laugh at, because what else can you do? Like I'll say, am I going to just cry all day? Then, I mean, I understand crying can be good and stuff, but it's like, I'd rather just laugh at it like a Buddha, and because it's just like, okay, wow, thank you. May I have another? It's like, so, I want to let these ladies, and you, I just want to say too, you are open to not only women but men in your group as well. So, and we're not
Yes, my Facebook groups are co-ed. Some of my laughter groups are co-ed. The right now I'm in a season that's all women, all midlife women. Like midlife women gone wild is the current theme. But
Nice.
but yeah, often my one-on-one clients are men. Men wanting to access their pleasure, men wanting to take themselves less seriously, men trying to understand what the heck is going on with their wives, and like their wives are trying all these things and learning all these things and unlearning all these things and expanding, and they don't want to lose them, and so they have to do some work too. So my marriage and family therapy work comes into my
That's
one-on-one coaching.
beautiful. So, how can these women and men out there start to get into these communities? Because one of the things that I really want to give the message during this retreat is, hey, get curious, do something different, find other communities. Yes, sometimes guess what? You can't bring the people that you know, your existing friends and family may not have that interest, or you may also not really be in a place where you want to share that with them. You
Yes.
have to go find, where do I find these people, where do I find where I can explore this and be accepted and just whatnot. So
Yeah.
that's where I see you have quite a few opportunities for people
Mhm.
to find out about this and find a
Mhm.
community where they can explore themselves and their pleasure points in all
Yeah.
aspects.
Yeah, you bring up two good points. One is like ask for help and then receive it because you're worth it. And the other one is the only life you can save is yours. And so if the rest of your family and your friends are not on board, it doesn't mean you can't still do the work yourself. So that being said, there's a bunch of just really easy, free ways to access the work. One of them is my podcast, which is Let Pleasure Be the Measure. And I do 3 episodes a week, and they're all heartfelt conversations about real life situations and how to bring pleasure into our lives and our work, and our families and ourselves. So that's the Let Pleasure Be the Measure podcast, which is also on YouTube. So you can watch it or listen to
Mhm.
it. And then I have a Facebook group that's free that's called Midlife Mischief and Merriment. And that's co ed and fun. Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry, sometimes we talk about things that are going on in the world that we want to find the humor in. And
Yeah,
it's
I
just,
do love the posts in there, the people
oh, good.
and how everybody just keeps rolling on everyone. It's like all of a sudden now you have permission to, oh, if they said that, then I could
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead and post this, you
Yeah,
know?
no holds barred in that group. Yeah, it's a fun loving group, but I they're all friendly, empathetic, intelligent people. So that group's available, and then I have I have some group offerings. One is a group membership called Midlife Mirth, where we meet every week and we play improv games. We just play. We're like, it's okay to play and like allow yourself to relax and enjoy some fun in sisterhood. That one is women. And then Roar with Laughter is my 8-week kind of signature program, which is 8 weeks where we move from rupture to rapture. And then we tell our stories, heartbreaking and hilarious stories, on a live comedy stage, which is a virtual show right now, but still it's a live show. And that's really transformative. That's called Roar with Laughter. And then my final one is the one-on-one coaching. And so, and I love working with people one-on-one because we can really get nitty gritty with all the, issues, each individual person's issues. And we get a lot of work done, and it's transformative and liberating, and so much change takes place. So I love that. And I'm offering your clients a free liberation call. So it's 30 minutes of high value coaching and me listening and offering any advice or wisdom I can, holding space for your stories. And then if any of my offerings are in service to you, I'll certainly let you know about those.
Oh, and that's great. So please take advantage of that, because then she can also steer you into what would be right for you right now, to just open up to all of this and just get comfortable
And I
in.
always forget the book. Yeah, the book's on Amazon. I forget.
And the book, yes, don't forget the book. We've got lots of links for you, girl. We're gonna put
Good.
a whole bunch of links.
Oh, good. Yeah, I forget sometimes. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Books a Million and all the places. So that's available too. It's $14.99 and juicy.
And juicy, yes. I was gonna say, and you'll have lots of stories I'm sure many people wouldn't have thought that are happening out there, which is to let people know there's some things happening out there.
More than we know, and it's all okay. It's all okay.
Yeah, yeah. There's a virtual show going on every day. It's called The Rest of the World.
It's not all in our heads. It's not all about
Yeah, yeah. And
it. Oh my goodness.
well, I do love the fact that just embrace all of it, because if anything, that's the other thing that I really admire about you is that, all of life is to be enjoyed,
Mhm.
the beautiful and the wonderful and just the tragic too. And um a lot of people are going through a lot of things, and we have to lighten up, because if you just sit there looking at what isn't, or how am I going to get through this, instead of just finding a community of people where you can just, you find out too. If anything, I'm sure you can attest to this, that once somebody comes in, and yes, your load, I'm not going to discount, may be heavy, but once you find out what other people are dealing with in
Yeah.
their lives, and the way that they can laugh at it, look at it, and still enjoy life, you're
Mhm.
just like, wow,
Right.
so
Perspective. And one thing you said, I remember somebody telling me, just lighten up. Like I've heard that before. And I was like, no, no, you don't understand. You don't understand how heavy it is or how much trauma there is. And so I started researching the idea of, lightening up and allowing ourselves to lift and elevate. And so now I see it as enlightenment. I mean, it's enlightenment to lighten up. So
yeah,
it's not shallow nor frivolous nor luxurious. It's, to me, life-saving. So I like to
yeah.
think of it as enlightenment. It makes it
Well,
feel
and I appreciate that. And just your perspective of, pleasure is the measure, and there's lots of pleasure to be had on there on all spectrums, even if it's just sitting and looking out the window at, the bird that's sitting there, chirping. That's beauty in and of itself. And the fact that we get to have the moment to enjoy it is that pleasure too. So
and crying and noticing ourselves crying our eyes out and saying, I don't want to look at the damn bird. That's beautiful too.
yeah, doesn't go to the crying thing. I still have a really hard time doing that one. And I know there's lots of people out there that are big advocates of crying. And I've just, yeah, I'm still learning to embrace that one. And I find I have to like leave the house or know that nobody can hear me crying, because sometimes I even like go, wow, who is that? Like, where did that come?
Car, shower, two crying. That's where I
Yeah,
cry.
the other place is, if I know I'm in a good place, is the motorcycle. I get on my
Yeah,
motorcycle
cool. If I had a motorcycle, I'd
and I just, yeah, yell, because you know what? You could just scream inside of your helmet and just
great. That's great. I swear a lot more with my mask on. I'm in the grocery store like, I'm like, I used to be much more like smiley and pleasant out in public.
right.
Now you like don't have to cover it up. It's kind of
Oh, well, thank you so much, Pasha.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for all of your gifts, and everyone out there. I'm not saying it rudely, but hey, lighten up, right? And you've got some beautiful ways of doing that, and if anything, I can attest to the community that she has and the posts that are there, and I've shared a lot of them, and they make you laugh, and they make you just look at what's going on with a complete different perspective, and going, you know what, it's not, it's not all that bad. It's not all that bad. If we can sit and laugh on it, and we still can meet each other online and do these things, our life really isn't that bad, so
Yeah.
it's really celebrating what is. And I thank you for doing that and sharing that and being an example of that every day, and what
Welcome.
you do with your son, and for all the women out there. It's awesome. It's beautiful. So please, people, follow Pasha in any way, shape, or form. There's going to be lots of links down there for you to find her, and do take advantage of meeting with her in person and talking to her, and finding out something about yourself you may have not known, and an
Mm.
offering that may just be a fit for you. So, any last closing words that you'd like to say to the people out there, Pasha?
I have a quote that I love. And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.
Yeah. Isn't that a niece nin?
Anise Nim. Yeah. To me, it just like I know it doesn't specifically say pleasure or laughter or anything in it. I just feel like it's our time. If you feel you're being called to like finally break free, or finally find yourself, or finally reclaim your pleasure, or finally do the thing, or finally take that risk, or finally leave that relationship, or finally fill in the blank, like now. Now.
Yeah, now, because like you said, it hurts, right? And we put it off because we don't, oh, that other thing's going to hurt more. But then when you really realize staying
Yeah.
where you're at
Yeah.
hurts the most. And then it's for all
Yeah.
you women out there who are doing things for everybody else, you're not doing anybody a favor when you're also suffering inside, because then it builds up the resentment, and then you feel guilty for feeling resentful. And then, guess what? Nobody can give you the pleasure you need but you. And it's not selfish to think of yourself first,
Nope.
so.
Self-full for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for that, and that reminder to all of you out there. It's more painful not to go and do the new thing, and explore and open up and, yeah, grow, bud. I mean, it's spring right now too. What a perfect time
Right.
to do
Blossom.
that. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pasha, so much. And yes, thank you for all of your beauty and your laughter and your life lessons, and that you continue to share. So please give Pasha a look up, see podcast, a book, Facebook group, coaching, roar, laughing. I mean, what else? I mean, I
My
can't wait till
my ADHD allows me to do a million things with zest. And
I can't wait till things open up, because I so want to go to Maine and have a lobster roll with you.
let's do
So
it. Let's do it. All right. Cool.
all right. Well, thank you, everyone. And please check her out. Thank you, Pasha, so much for everything. And we'll see you on the next interview. Bye now. Stay happy, happy, healthy, positive, and enjoy the rest of your never before lived day. Okay. Cheers.